There's something about a snowy road at dusk. The way it muffles sound. The way shadows stretch just a little longer. On February 9th, 2004, under the deepening sky of rural New Hampshire, a black Saturn sedan veered off Route 112 and struck a snowbank. By the time police arrived, its driver, 21-year-old Maura Murray, had vanished. She left no footprints in the snow. No calls for help. No signs of struggle. Just an empty vehicle. A cracked windshield. A rag stuffed in the tailpipe. In the years since, Maura's disappearance has sparked endless theories, heated debates, and desperate searches. But what remains at its core is a singular, haunting question. How does a young woman disappear without a trace? This is not just a mystery. It's a void, a chilling silence that echoes louder the longer it remains unanswered. Maura Murray was, by most outward appearances, a promising young woman. Born on May 4th, 1982, in Hanson, Massachusetts, she was the fourth of 5 children in a close-knit Irish Catholic family. Smart, athletic, and soft-spoken, Maura excelled academically and ran track. Her older siblings had pursued military careers, and Maura initially followed suit. She entered the Military Academy at West Point in 2000. It was a prestigious step, one that few her age could claim. But Maura's time there was short-lived. She left after less than a year following an incident involving credit card fraud, specifically the unauthorized use of a stolen card number to order food from a delivery service. It was a small offense, but telling. Her father, Fred, would later describe her as under incredible pressure, isolated, and possibly overwhelmed by West Point's strict environment. After leaving the academy, Maura transferred to the University of Massachusetts Amherst to study nursing. Her academic record was solid. She worked part-time jobs, including one at the campus security desk. But beneath the surface, there were signs of struggle. One Thursday night in November 2003, Maura broke down in tears at her security desk shift. When her supervisor arrived, Maura was nearly catatonic, only able to repeat, "My sister." It turned out she'd received a call from her older sister Kathleen, who was dealing with personal and substance abuse issues. But Maura's emotional collapse hinted at something deeper. A stress fracture in an otherwise controlled exterior. Her boyfriend, Bill Roche, was a fellow West Point cadet, and by many accounts, they were serious. But their relationship was complicated, strained by distance, rumors of infidelity, and a series of cryptic communications in the days leading up to Maura's disappearance. None of these incidents, on their own, screamed crisis. But stitched together, they painted a portrait of someone on the edge. Not visibly unraveling, but fraying quietly beneath the surface. February 9th, 2004, began like any other Monday at UMass Amherst. Cold, quiet. The campus was waking slowly under a blanket of snow. But for Maura Murray, the day unfolded with a series of strange, seemingly disconnected actions that would later fuel years of speculation. It started with an email. That morning, Maura reached out to her professors to inform them of a sudden family emergency. She said she would be away for a few days and wouldn't be attending class. But there was no such emergency. Her family was unaware of any trip. She also called a New Hampshire condo rental service to inquire about properties in Bartlett, a location where her family had vacationed in the past. Whether she booked anything is unclear, but she was looking north. At around 1 p.m., Maura withdrew $280 from an ATM. Surveillance footage showed her alone, bundled in a black jacket. Her face was composed. She then stopped by a nearby liquor store and purchased a box of Franzia wine, Bailey's Irish Cream, Kahlua, and a bottle of vodka. A mix that suggested she might have planned for more than one person, or at least more than one night. These were the last confirmed images of Maura Murray alive. She returned to her dorm, packed several days' worth of clothes, school books, and toiletries into her car. Curiously, she left behind some important belongings: her textbooks, birth control, and most of her makeup. Her cell phone and debit card were taken, but would never be used again after that day. Then, just before 4:30 p.m., Maura got into her Saturn and began driving north. Alone. No one knows exactly why. By nightfall, the snow was light but steady, casting a quiet over the winding roads of Haverhill, New Hampshire. Route 112, also known as Wild Ammonoosuc Road, is narrow, flanked by thick woods and intermittent homes. It's the kind of place where strangers stand out. At 7:27 p.m., local police receive a call from a resident named Faith Westman. She reported a car accident outside her house. A black Saturn had gone off the road and was partially lodged in a snowbank. Before officers could arrive, another local, Butch Atwood, a school bus driver returning from work, pulled up beside the vehicle. Inside, he saw a young woman. She was alone. She didn't appear injured, but she was shaken. He asked if she needed help. She declined. She told him she had already called AAA. That wasn't true. There had been no such call. Atwood drove home and called the police himself. When law enforcement arrived minutes later, Maura was gone. The driver's side door was locked. The car had sustained front-end damage, and both airbags had deployed. A box of Franzia wine was found in the back seat, with traces spilled inside the vehicle. There was a cracked windshield, and in the tailpipe, a white rag stuffed tightly inside. Her belongings were scattered, but not ransacked. Her wallet and phone were missing. Her gloves, too. But the most crucial clue was what wasn't there at all: Maura herself. There were no fresh footprints in the snow leading away from the scene. No sign of struggle. No blood. Nothing. Just a silent road, an abandoned car, and a young woman who'd seemingly stepped out of reality. When Officer Cecil Smith arrived on the scene at 7:46 p.m., Maura Murray had been missing for less than 10 minutes, maybe less. And yet, despite the fresh snow, there were no clear tracks leading into the woods or down the road. The black Saturn had been locked, its damage evident but not catastrophic. Inside, officers found the printed directions to Burlington, Vermont, a city about 2 hours northwest. They also found a stuffed animal and a book on nursing. A soda bottle in the car smelled of alcohol. But there was no cell phone, no debit card, and no clear sign of where Maura had gone. Then there was the rag in the tailpipe, a detail that would later puzzle investigators and theorists alike. Some speculated it was an attempt to disable the car. Others thought it might have been advice from her mechanically inclined father, Fred, who reportedly told her once to use a rag to reduce smoke if the car was acting up. It's unclear whether it was sabotage or precaution. What was clear, however, was that Maura had vanished in the span of minutes. A search of the area began almost immediately. Locals joined law enforcement in canvassing the woods and properties nearby. Dogs were brought in, but the scent trail led only a short distance up the road before disappearing, possibly indicating that Maura had gotten into another vehicle. But whose and why? There were no witnesses, no camera footage, no conclusive signs of struggle. The environment was open, cold, and unforgiving. And yet somehow, Maura had slipped through it, completely unseen. In the immediate hours following the crash, Maura's disappearance was not treated with the urgency it deserved. At first, law enforcement considered her a likely runaway, a stressed college student, perhaps embarrassed by the crash, taking time to clear her head. But that assumption didn't last. By the next day, when Maura failed to return home or contact anyone, her boyfriend, family, or friends, concern turned into alarm. Her father, Fred Murray, arrived in New Hampshire almost immediately, determined to help. He began canvassing the area himself, retracing Maura's likely path and pleading with local authorities to treat the situation seriously. He believed from the start that his daughter had been abducted. The official investigation ramped up. Police conducted air searches with helicopters. Canines were brought in again, focusing on the woods and nearby properties. The surrounding homes were searched, including a residence near where the scent dogs had halted their trail. That search, however, was limited at the time to the grounds and common areas. The interior wasn't inspected until years later. Maura's personal life was scrutinized. Investigators interviewed her friends, combed through her phone and email records, and reviewed surveillance from the campus. But the timeline offered more confusion than clarity. And while Maura's disappearance gained traction in local news, it would be months before the case truly captured national attention. By then, many leads had already gone cold. In the absence of clear evidence, theories rushed to fill the void. Some were grounded in logic. Others veered into speculation. None offered definitive answers. One early theory was that Maura had run away. She had bought alcohol, emailed professors, and packed up her car. Was she planning a break from life? But if she meant to disappear voluntarily, why leave in such a vulnerable way, in freezing conditions, with no money trail, no digital breadcrumbs? Another theory suggested she'd taken her own life. Stress, past behavior, the cryptic preparation, it painted a troubling picture. But there was no suicide note. And statistically, suicides that occur in public or near a road typically involve a discovery. There was no body, no trace. Foul play, then, seemed the most persistent theory. Could Maura have accepted a ride from a stranger after the crash? A passing motorist who offered help but had darker intentions? The timing would have been tight, but not impossible. Local sex offenders were questioned. Known criminals in the area were investigated. Still, no leads. As months turned into years, a new breed of investigator emerged, the amateur sleuth. Online forums lit up with timelines, photo comparisons, theories about the rag in the tailpipe. People tracked her last known purchases, compared weather reports, and debated every inconsistency. The case had become a puzzle the internet couldn't let go of. But with every new theory came new noise, contradictions, accusations, even harassment. Tips poured in, many anonymous. Sightings of Maura were reported from Canada to New Jersey. None were confirmed, and every dead end made the void a little wider. As technology advanced, so too did the search for Maura Murray. New tools offered renewed hope, but yielded few answers. Years after the disappearance, ground-penetrating radar was used near a home close to the crash site, where scent dogs had once stopped abruptly. The house, at the time of the initial investigation, had been nearby, but not thoroughly searched. Years later, new owners allowed private investigators to scan the basement. The radar reportedly showed an anomaly, possibly a disturbance beneath the concrete. Excavation was requested. Authorities declined. Eventually, an independent group was granted permission. But when the area was dug up, no remains were found. Tracking dogs had initially traced Maura's scent for about 100 yards east from her car, suggesting she might have entered another vehicle. It was a slender lead, but one with major implications. If Maura had gotten into someone's car, it might explain the absence of footprints and her complete vanishing from the scene. Another theory involved the nearby abandoned towns and tunnel systems that dot parts of New Hampshire, a legacy of long-gone mining operations. Some speculated Maura might have found shelter in one, but no entrances were ever discovered near the crash site. And again, there are no footprints. Investigators explored cell tower pings, trying to triangulate any movement. But Maura's phone never pinged after she left Amherst. No outgoing calls. No incoming messages. Total digital silence. Every tool, sniffer dogs, radar scans, satellite imaging, brought the same result. Nothing. Before serial killers became Netflix stars and armchair sleuthing turned into a mainstream hobby, there was Maura Murray. Her case became one of the internet's earliest true crime rabbit holes, a mystery that unfolded not just in newsrooms or police stations, but in message boards, blog posts, and digital timelines. The forums began as small pockets of curiosity, places like Web Sleuths and Maura Murray Missing.org. They soon grew into sprawling ecosystems of amateur investigators, digital archivists, and, inevitably, conspiracy theorists. Users dissected her ATM footage frame by frame. Others tracked liquor store receipts, cell tower data, and snowfall patterns. Some went as far as visiting the crash site, retracing her final steps with handheld cameras and geolocation software. But not all attention was helpful. The obsession invited harassment of witnesses, Maura's family, and even each other. Theories turned into accusations. Friendships crumbled. Online infighting diluted legitimate leads. Still, the digital world played a role the physical investigation could not. It kept her name alive. It pressured law enforcement. It documented inconsistencies and captured what could have been overlooked. Maura's case marked a turning point in true crime media. Long before podcasts and YouTube channels profiled cold cases, thousands of strangers were already piecing together timelines, comparing notes, and refusing to forget her. It was the first viral mystery of the new millennium. For Maura Murray's family, the search never ended. It only changed shape. Fred Murray, her father, quickly became the public face of the investigation. In the early days, he was everywhere, holding vigils, confronting police, speaking to reporters. His grief was visible, sometimes volatile, but it was always rooted in one unshakable belief, that his daughter did not simply run away. Fred walked the woods himself. He knocked on doors. He handed out flyers along Route 112 year after year, long after cameras and volunteers had left. To him, the case had been mishandled from the beginning. He clashed with local authorities, pushing for more aggressive investigation, for searches that never came, and for transparency he felt was denied. Maura's siblings also kept the case alive. They maintained a website, organized events, and engaged with a growing online community. But time does what it always does. It dulls headlines. It frays unity. And as the years passed, the family too would fracture under the strain of uncertainty, public scrutiny, and the burden of maintaining hope. Still, every February, people returned to the stretch of Route 112 where Maura's Saturn was found. Candles were lit. Signs were posted. Her picture, frozen in time at age 21, stood against the snow-covered trees. No new evidence. No arrests. No resolution. But always the same question hanging in the cold air. Where's Maura? Time usually buries cold cases in silence. But Maura Murray's disappearance is different. It lingers, unresolved, untamed, and stubbornly alive in the public imagination. In the years since 2004, new efforts have surfaced. A private dive team searched nearby bodies of water. Law enforcement opened fresh lines of inquiry, even revisiting properties close to the crash site. None led to a breakthrough. In 2017, the case was officially reopened by the New Hampshire Cold Case Unit. For the family, it was both a relief and a grim reminder. More than a decade had passed, and the case remained frozen. There was also renewed interest in media. Documentaries were made. Podcasts explored every facet. Journalists uncovered inconsistencies in the original police reports, timing discrepancies, witness statements, missing details. But like all pieces of this puzzle, none formed a whole. Maura's belongings have never resurfaced. Her cell phone, her debit card gone. No activity, no digital echo. What's left is a portrait suspended in time. A young woman with plans and secrets, caught in a moment that swallowed her whole. No one has been arrested. No remains have been found. And no single theory fits all the facts. Even now, 2 decades later, Maura Murray's case refuses to close. It defies closure, explanation, and forgetting. Some disappearances fade from memory. Others grow louder with time. Maura Murray's story endures not because we know what happened, but because we don't. It exists in fragments. A quiet dorm room, a frozen highway, a missing girl, and an empty silence that no one has been able to explain away. She left behind no note, no signal, no confirmed destination. Only a question that has haunted her family, investigators, and thousands of strangers for 20 years. What happened on that road in Haverhill? The answers may still be out there, in a memory, in a mistake, or buried beneath layers of time. Until they surface, Maura's name remains etched into the digital age's first great mystery. So what do you think of today's video? Do you have something you want us to feature next? Tell us in the comments. It will also mean a lot to us if you like and subscribe. Close the book if you can. This is Black Chapter,